The Newsagents USA.
I'm here for two reasons, pal. One, to rebuild the economy for hard-working middle-class people, give everybody a shot. Just a straight shot. Everybody gets a fair chance, number one. Number two, remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce the president. Challenge me at the convention.
Wow. Where to start with that? That was Joe Biden ringing in to a breakfast show that's on MSNBC called Morning Joe, which is like the sort of Democrat Party notice board. And it was quite a rant of him going against the elites. Might say that the president is part of the elite.
So, starter for 10, who does that remind you of? Calling in to a morning TV chat show, ranting about the elites, talking about the black vote, and trying to make the case that there is no one who can beat him in the race to be president. Joe Biden is taking on the mantle of Trump this week. Is it going to work? Welcome to the Newsagents USA.
The Newsagents USA.
It's John.
It's Emily.
And something astonishing is unfolding in the US, like the likes of which we've not seen before, which is a president clinging on to his nomination to run it again with an ever-growing chorus of voices publicly saying he's got to get out of the way, and so many more people behind the scenes thinking this is a catastrophe waiting to happen if Joe Biden stays to continue to try to fight Donald Trump after that horrendous debate performance.
Yeah, let us take you behind the curtain for a moment, because last night, Tuesday, was crunch time when there was a caucus behind closed doors for House Democrats. And the idea was that they would all come together and voice their concerns and, crucially, wouldn't then go and talk to the press out loud on camera about what they had decided. And I was sort of messaging a few last night, and the message that I got back when I asked, how did it go? Is it all resolved? Was, for better or worse, whether people like it or not, it's resolved. Biden is our nominee. Only thing that could change it is if there were a future incident. This sounds really, loaded and slightly threatening. I don't think they meant it like that. But when I pressed a bit further, it was interesting. The phrasing one of the House Dems used to me, he put it in a kind of UK parliamentarian context, and he said, Sir Graham Brady didn't get enough letters from our caucus members. Biden safe. In other words, and this does not mean, I should say, that the whole thing is resolved. I think it is far from resolved. But as far as those Dems who went in to voice their concerns behind closed doors the loudest, they feel there weren't enough of them to have tipped the balance in those meetings overnight.
So it's interesting. You and I have had complementary conversations, not contradictory ones, which is good. Yeah. The complementary conversation that I've had is with someone who was absolutely at Barack Obama's right-hand side, absolutely critical figure.
Wasn't it? Was it Michelle?
It wasn't Michelle. He won't go public about what he's learned and what he understands to be happening because he says it's just too risky. He says there's only one question, which is, should Biden get out of the race? The answer to that is yes, of course he should. So what's happening is that he reckons that if Biden survives this week and tomorrow, Thursday, he's got a news conference where he's going to take all questions. He's going to have to put up a decent performance then. If there are no sudden big names, then he is safe unless Barack Obama and Bill Clinton tell him it is over. And if they did that, that changes everything. But they would have to do it in a way that the next steps are organised. Because what you can't have is can't have a vacuum, can't get to the convention in August in Chicago without a candidate. And then you've got all these delegates that are free to vote however they want. And my God, democracy might prevail. And you could get a left-wing candidate, a Bernie Sanders, an Elizabeth Warren, and they wouldn't stand a chance against Trump. The other thing he said is there is no way that Kamala beats Trump. there is too much hostility, and so that the easy option, which would be to get Biden off the ticket, Kamala runs, that's not going to happen either.
There is so much to unpack there. I mean, look, let's start with this week, where ironically, the thing that is saving Biden right now is the arrival of Keir Starmer and others for the NATO talks, 36 world leaders allowing Joe Biden to look very statesmanlike. He is obviously the president, and he is welcoming them for this 75th anniversary of NATO. And I guess the thinking behind the scenes will be keep this as scripted as possible. You know, put everything on auto cue, make sure he's surrounded at all times so he's not, going off and wandering, make sure that he's upright. And the point I think about this whole thing is, as soon as the question is asked about his cognitive capabilities, everyone's got a story. So Olaf Scholz, we now understand, the German Chancellor, there was a meeting missed by Biden several years ago because Biden was too tired to meet him in the evening, went to bed. If you think back to COP26, there were those shots of Joe Biden nodding off in the middle of a conference. Honestly, who wouldn't? I mean, I'd be there with or without the jet lag, having a little snooze through most of the speeches, I think. But at the time, it was seen to be something that was taken out of context. And I think now people are going back and revisiting. So to get back, he has to get through this week of NATO. And I think he's untouchable as long as he's surrounded by the world statesmen. Then what happens? The weekend comes and it is the beginning of the Republican convention in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin swing state. Now, what we're waiting for, I guess, is to see whether Donald Trump reveals his running mate, which he's promised to do. But if Trump thinks that there is the slightest suggestion that the person he's running against might not be Biden, does his whole equation of who that running mate is change? If suddenly it does become Kamala, does he go for Marco Rubio, help boost the Latino vote? Does he think about a woman instead of one of the kind of white guys that he's currently got at the top of the ticket, J.D. Vance or Doug Burgum? So Trump is also slightly in limbo and desperate for the Democrats not to replace Biden.
Yeah, and we can hear from Lara Trump, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law, who has been speaking about, wait for it, how unconstitutional it would be to change your candidate.
If they remove Joe Biden from the ticket somehow and they do not have Kamala Harris as their nominee and they try to plug someone else in, Maria, it is literally going against our democratic process here in this country. Millions of Americans came out in those primaries and voted for Joe Biden to be their nominee on the Democrat side. If they decide right here in the 11th hour to plug somebody else in and it's not Kamala Harris, I can't think of a bigger assault to our democratic process than doing just that.
The Republicans kind of, as you say, Emily, uncertain about how this pans out, what happens next, what does Biden do, what do the Democrats do. I'm so struck by, is there such a word as tepidity? The tepidness of the support for Biden from the congressional leaders of the Democratic Party, in Congress, from Chuck Schumer, the Senate Majority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, the Minority Leader in the House of Representatives.
As I've said before, I'm with Joe.
Support Joe Biden staying as your Democratic nominee?
Yes, I made clear the day after the debate, publicly, that I support President Joe Biden and the Democratic ticket. My position has not changed.
They have to say that. They are, if you like, management. They're the boss class. So until there is a change of leader at the top, their loyalty has to be to Joe Biden. But I think you're right. They're being very cautious with the words they use. There is no enthusiasm there. There is just a ticking exercise. Because as we've talked about in this country, when power shifts away, it suddenly happens. It's slowly, and then quickly.
Yes.
And so for now, they have to be on the ticket.
So I want to try and do an anatomy of where the Democratic Party is now in terms of support for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
There are 5% probably of Democrats who think that Joe Biden is still wonderful, that he is the best person to beat Donald Trump, that there is no alternative, that all this stuff about his age is exaggerated, overdone, overblown. He had a bad debate performance. Move on. Everything is fine. I think there is probably 90% of the Democratic Party that would just breathe the biggest sigh of relief if he announced that he wasn't going to run. I mean, 90%. I genuinely believe the figures are that high. But their calculus is complicated because they think if he does stay in the race and they go public with their concerns, they're only making a bad situation worse and making it more likely that Trump gets there. And you've got the 5%, the remaining 5%, who've been outspoken, who've broken cover and who have said, Joe, go, please, now, for the sake of the Democrats at the next election, standing a chance of stopping Donald Trump. But some have broken cover. The first senator to break cover is the Colorado senator, Michael Bennet, speaking on CNN last night.
I just think this race is on a trajectory that is very worrisome if you care about the future of this country. Joe Biden was 9 points up at this time. The last time he was running, Hillary Clinton was 5 points up. This is the first time in more than 20 years that a Republican president has been up in this part of the campaign. Donald Trump is on track, I think, to win this election and maybe win it by a landslide and take with him the Senate and the House. And so for me, this isn't a question about polling. It's not a question about politics. It's a moral question about the future of our country. And I think it's critically important for us to come to grips with what we face if together we put this country on the path of electing Donald Trump again.
So you're worried that your party is not just going to lose the White House if Joe Biden is at the top of the ticket, but that you're also going to lose both chambers of Congress?
I think that we could lose the whole thing.
And this is Representative Lloyd Doggett from Texas.
The risk to our country is so great, and we need to have the strongest candidate possible in order to assure that the values that we hold for our democracy are not traded for an authoritarian strongman bent on revenge against his opponents.
Do you expect any of the other colleagues that you've heard from to follow your lead?
I'm hopeful that some of them will. Maybe more importantly is that they express their views privately to the White House.
But perhaps the most interesting voice and influential voice who has come out and spoken, but slightly with a forked tongue, is one of the most influential Democrats in the United States, and that is the former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. She went on Morning Joe, it seems to be the place to go, to say, well, what exactly? Have a listen.
It's up to the president to decide if he is going to run. We're all encouraging him to make that decision because time is running short. I think overwhelming support of the caucus. It's not for me to say. I'm not the head of the caucus anymore. But he's beloved. He is respected, and people want him to make that decision, not me.
He has said he has made the decision. He has said firmly this week he is going to run. Do you want him to run?
I want him to do whatever he decides to do, and that's the way it is. Whatever he decides, we go with.
Why do you need to say it's for Joe to decide if Joe Biden has already made it absolutely clear that he's staying in the race? Nancy Pelosi is not saying, Joe, it's for you to decide. She's really saying, Joe, it's for you to really decide you're pulling out. Because, frankly, why does he need to make a decision? He's already made a decision. She is, in essence, saying, Joe, you have made the wrong decision. And this is a really significant intervention.
So the reason this is not the end of the conversation, even though House Dems are sort of trying to put a lid on it for now, is that there is also the question of the polls in individual senators' states. And what we heard from Joe Biden in that interview with George Stephanopoulos last weekend was a president who sounded like he didn't actually believe the polls.
I've not seen what you're proposing.
You haven't seen the fall off in the polls. You haven't seen the reports of discontent in the Democratic Party, House Democrats, Senate Democrats.
I've seen it from the press.
Mr. President, I've never seen a president at 36% approval get reelected.
Well, I don't believe that's my approval rate. That's not what our polls show.
And this is a worry, because there are states, swing states, and by swing states we're looking particularly at places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, There are places where Joe Biden is polling much, much worse than the senators from those states. Tammy Baldwin, for example, in Wisconsin, is polling way ahead of Joe Biden. If he stays at the top of the ticket, if people decide that, well, would you go out and vote just for your senator if you don't really like the president? If you don't like the Dems at the top of the ticket, what happens to all those underneath them? The Democrat senators, the House representatives, all the rest of it. And I think that fundamentally, we know how politics works. It becomes very personal. And if people think they're going to lose their own jobs, their states, democracy, as we keep hearing, is probably on the line in this election. But it's also about, well, hang on, I'm going to speak out because I might not have a seat, a place, a position to speak out from afterwards if we let this carry on.
Look, this is one tiny anecdote. I spoke to an American couple last night. Their son is now 18. He's got the chance to vote for the first time in this election. He absolutely cannot abide the idea of voting for Donald Trump. There is no way that he's going to do it. But if Biden is the presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, he has said there is no way he is going to vote. He does not believe he is a fit person to be the president for the next 4 years. Now,
yeah, that's youth. That's the budding enthusiasm of youth saying, I'm not getting off the sofa.
I'm not getting off the sofa for this. And yet you'd think that an 18-year-old, educated, articulate, interested in politics, you would die to be able to go to the polling station. They are not. And this is something that Biden stubbornly is refusing to believe. He is, honestly, what was interesting about, it's worth playing a bit more of him on Morning Joe, because it was this long rant which had as much anchoring to the truth as a Donald Trump intervention when he used to do that in 2016.
Really?
Yeah. There was a lot of stuff that was just nonsense.
Look, we talk about debates. Look at his performance at debates. He lied over, Trump has 50 lies. Look, this is a guy who says 10% of the universe. I don't want to get into it. He's just a liar. And he hadn't done a damn thing since the debate. He's been riding around in a golf cart for 10 days or down in Mar-a-Lago talking with his wealthy friends. I'm not running because of these guys, Joe. I'm running because, and you know me well enough to know this from the very beginning, I ran because I never bought on to the trickle-down economic theory. I never bought into the notion that we have to walk away from the rest of the world and cave to Putin or anybody else. I've never believed any of that. And I'm confident that's where the American people are. So what I did was I went out and I wanted to make sure that there wasn't any slippage at all. And with the average voter, I don't care what the millionaires think. And by the way, 97% of all the people who contribute to us are people making under 200, contributing under $200. I think we have the largest contingent ever in history. I'm not positive of that, but I think that's true. And so I want their support, but that's not the reason I'm running. I'm not running about what they think and what they care about. And by the way, you don't see a whole hell of a lot of them flocking to Trump. You don't see a whole lot of CEOs flocking to Trump. You don't see any. You see the major economists out there talking about what I have been able to do. I don't hear anybody talking about his economic plan likely to bring America around and keep America first. And by the way, here's Trump talking about all that he's done and Trump and his debate night. He's a pathological liar. He lied about Roe. He refused to accept the outcome of the election. He refused to condemn January 6th. And
just to go back to that phone call, what you are hearing is something that doesn't even sound like Joe Biden, particularly in terms of the talking points. He's got a new advisor. He's got somebody in there who is kind of saying, hit Trump where it hurts. Talk about this. Talk about your fundraiser. Talk about, all the people that support you. Mike Donnellan's his name. And I think it's worth recognising that Joe Biden is not doing that on camera. It's a TV show, but he's not doing it on camera. He's doing it on the phone. We assume that he was sticking to some kind of script. It doesn't sound that scripted, but there are talking points in there. And I think that there is a question mark, really, over who is sort of pulling the strings at the moment. Who's saying, you've got to go out, be more Trump, be more aggressive, start telling them how it is. And that doesn't really sound like Joe Biden at all anyway. He's lost his authenticity of who he is.
But also, I can't underline this enough, it is the head of state of the most powerful country in the world phoning in himself without any warning to the producers. The producers are picking up the phone. Hello, I've got the President of the United States on the phone. Oh, okay, just connecting you through to the studio. I mean, it's like you're on a phone-in show and you've suddenly got the King. Hello, it's King Charles here.
I mean, they just have to listen.
The British equivalent would be King Charles picking up the phone and ringing up on LBC and suddenly being put through to James O'Brien. I mean, it's kind of nuts, isn't it?
But I think they'd actually get along quite well.
Yeah, they probably would. But I think that is what Biden did. And you think, wow, this is unbelievable that he's doing this.
Yeah. Look, there is one person who I would say has got this almost unbroken record of being right about the political weather, and his name is James Carville. He's the guy, you'll know by now, he coined that phrase.
The Raging Cajun.
The Raging Cajun, the guy who coined "it's the economy, stupid" in the Clinton years. He worked for Clinton. He called it that Clinton would win Georgia when, it had not been done for years before. And he called it that Biden would win Georgia this time round in 2020. And he came on CNN last night and said, he didn't really explain what he meant, but he said Biden will not be standing for president in 2024. Have a listen.
Well, I mean, Cook moved 6 states away from Democrats. I watch some of these press conferences. It reminds me of a book they made me read in college called Ship of Fools. A bunch of desperate people sailing into disaster. And, I just think that cowards have never beat criminals in a war yet. And the way that you beat criminals is not to be cowards, is to take it directly home. There's nothing that I see that remotely changes my mind or changes what I think about where we are. I still think I'll stand by my thing that he won't run.
So what does that mean? He won't run. Does it mean he will be stopped from running? Does it mean something will happen? I mean, suddenly the possibilities between now, July and November are endless. Right?
Well, Biden in his interview with George Stephanopoulos said only the Lord Almighty is going to stop him from running.
Yeah, or if this was a Hollywood film, a little CIA agent at the top of a flight of stairs.
Yeah,
right?
Some people have been waiting for the CIA agent to take out Donald Trump, but that hasn't happened. I don't think...
This is Hollywood. This is Hollywood.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not
Hollywood,
real life.
not reality. Look, I think that, the chances are that Biden has improbably pulled off this bullying campaign. I think there has been the most...
Bullying?
I think he's bullying people into submission. Yeah, I'm not going. You can wreck the whole thing, but I'm not getting out of the way. He's bullying people into
Don't you just have to say
accepting.
that? I think you have to say that publicly, whatever your head is doing.
Like
Rishi Sunak has to say he's going to win the election.
No. I think that there is gaslighting going on an epic scale in the White House about what the state of his health is. Everyone is framing this, he had a bad debate performance. No, it wasn't that he had a bad debate performance. It wasn't that he made the wrong political point at some point and opened up a new flank. It was that he looked ill. Yeah. He looked old. He looked incapable. That was the reality.
And we now know, of course, there has been this doctor, a Parkinson's specialist, who has visited the White House 8 times in the last few months. Now, they have made clear that Joe Biden has been tested for these sort of cognitive neurological diseases, and he has not got Parkinson's. We don't know specifically who the doctor was attending. There are more people in the White House that doctor sees, whether it's military veterans that are working there, whether it's the Biden family, we don't know. But together, this idea...
Hold on, I don't buy that. I'm sorry.
What?
I know how the White House... There is the White House Medical Centre that is in the East Wing of the White House with a GP and, full medical staff. If anyone has got medical issues, they go to Walter Reed. Which is the Naval Hospital in Bethesda, 7 miles north of Washington. Walter Reed does not come to the White House for anybody. Walter Reed Hospital comes to the White House for one person. And one person only, maybe 2, the First Lady. That's it.
Well, there is more than Biden, I think. I mean, it's the White House family.
You're being very generous.
This is what I've heard. This is the caveat that it might not be about Biden.
I honestly, I was there when the Walter Reed Hospital came and shipped Donald Trump off when he had COVID. The Walter Reed Hospital is the specialist naval hospital.
Helicopter trip.
In the helicopter trip. I mean, unbelievable. The idea that a specialist in Parkinson's disease would be making 8 visits to the White House to see, I don't know, some junior member of staff is for the birds.
I hear you.
It's only going to be for the president. And the White House spokeswoman, Karen Jean-Pierre, has not been able to explain. She said he doesn't have Parkinson's. Well, what was this guy doing here 8 times in 8 months?
Yeah.
question.
Wait. Hold on. Wait a second.
Eight times, or at least once, in regards to the president specifically.
Hold on a second.
Not what you should be able to answer by this point.
Wait, no. No, wait a minute. Ed, please. A little respect here, please. So every year, around the president's physical examination, he sees a neurologist. That's 3 times, right? So I am telling you that he has seen a neurologist 3 times while he has been in this presidency. That's what I'm saying. I am telling you that he has seen them 3 times. That is what I'm sharing with you, right? So every time he has a physical, he has had to see a neurologist. So that is answering that question.
No, it's not.
No, it is. It is. You're asking me.
Kennard, come to the White House.
But I also said to you, Ed, I also said to you, for security reasons, we cannot share names. We cannot share names. We have to.
Others he would have met with. You can share names in regards to if someone came here in regards to the president.
We cannot share names of specialists broadly, from a dermatologist to a neurologist. We cannot share names. There are security reasons. We have to protect. I understand that. I hear you.
Right there for anyone to see.
Ed, I hear you. I cannot from here confirm any of that because we have to keep their privacy. I think they would appreciate that too.
That is the thing that the White House is most terrified of now, being accused of a cover-up by the general public. Because, and you heard how Karine Jean-Pierre is being so cautious. She does not want to be the Sean Spicer standing there spouting lies about, crowd sizes to the Washington media there. She wants to be on the right side of the truth. And in a sense, I think this goes to the core of it, which is if it emerges, not that Biden was old or that he was cognitively impaired, whatever, but that they knew something, they knew this and were trying to keep it covered up for the year of 2024, the whole election process, then that becomes a much, much bigger issue about trust and clarity with the American public. And I think that's really damaging.
Yeah, and look, we've been here before. I mean, with Trump, when they would not answer the question at the Walter Reed Hospital where Donald Trump had been taken when he contracted COVID during the presidential, kind of election period.
Well, just after that first debate.
Yeah, just whether he had been tested for COVID before he went on the stage. And the physician who was there, who's, a member of the armed forces, his first service is to the armed forces and to the Constitution, wouldn't answer the question. Who absolutely did everything to avoid answering the question. And that is dissembling. And I think that we're seeing some of that. Now, Karine Jean-Pierre has said he does not have Parkinson's disease. But please explain then why a specialist was brought in 8 times in 8 months, which is very unusual indeed. And so I don't think we've got an honest answer from the White House about what is happening with Joe Biden's health. And the other thing is, I don't think you can treat the American people as fools. The American people saw what they saw in that debate. And you and I, who have both been, I think, on the side of saying, you know what, he may be old.
Don't turn this into a talking point.
Exactly. He may be old, but we're in no position to kind of make judgments about whether he's fit or not. You saw that debate and you thought, my God. And the American people saw that as well.
So you talked about the fact that if anything happens, it has to be one move.
Well, it has to be neatly orchestrated.
Neatly orchestrated. You can't remove a sitting president from standing again without absolutely filling in behind him. And you said straight away that your source, your Obama contact said it can't be Kamala. There is a reason why Kamala is the most obvious choice, not least because all the funding that has come in for Joe Biden would transfer directly to them because she's on the ticket. She has been elected, in other words. She is the elected vice president, so that would be the swiftest move. I'm not sure I buy the fact that she couldn't beat Trump. I think a lot of people in the Democratic Party could beat Trump right now, and I think he is terrified even of her, even with her popularity ratings. But we started having a conversation about, if you were just spinning the wheel, who would you bring in?
This is like who are you going to pick for the England team if you're going to drop.
Well, it's your sort of dream dinner party, isn't
exactly.
it? So I mentioned Mark Kelly, who is the Arizona senator. I think he's done 2 terms now, and Funnily enough, you said he doesn't have name recognition. I don't think that matters, because I think once you are, I mean, I would talk about Kamala being the top ticket, Mark Kelly being the VP. Once you say, this is my VP pick, they get name recognition.
Oh,
Believe me, they get covers galore.
As VP, that's fine.
Yeah.
As VP, no one had heard of...
I mean, I think he's a smart move because he, he's an astronaut. There's nothing more glamorous in the world than being an astronaut. And I have to say that our colleagues at Hacks on Tap, if you haven't cottoned onto that, is a great one. They just said that this morning. We had this talk last week, so I'm very proud that I got him out into the public arena, at least with you.
So I mean, the other person that everyone is looking at, I mean, there's Gavin Newsom in California. There are some issues with Gavin Newsom. California is very liberal.
You can't have two Californias.
You can't
have Kamala and Gavin.
Yeah. There are a couple of other governors, that Andy Beshear in Kentucky.
See, I don't even know him.
Yeah, he's won twice now against the odds in a kind of very solid red Republican state. So he will be one to watch. Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, again, another one.
Swing state
to watch. Wes Moore is up and coming in Maryland, but Wes Moore is also black. So if it's Kamala, would you have...
Is he too new?
Too new as well, probably. But I think with the VP, you can have that.
Yeah.
What you want to do, the normal thing to do when you are balanced is balance the ticket. You have John F. Kennedy, Northern Catholic, kind of wealthy, and you have Lyndon B. Johnson as the vice president candidate because it brings something else, because he was from Texas. And so it goes on. The only time I can think of a ticket where the vice president didn't bring much was Gore and Clinton, where you thought, well, actually, they're both slightly Ivy League educated. There was not that much dissimilarity between them, and what was the added bonus that Al Gore brought? So I think that you're trying to look for people. I mean, I think that where an awful lot of people I've heard is Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, Michigan, key swing state, has done incribly well there. Widened the margins of victory.
How do you make the case?
But then you've got to get
replacing Kamala with Gretchen Whitmer.
And you made the point you made, which is absolutely...
Oh, you're going to say I made one really good point.
No,
Thanks.
they've only made one good point the whole day.
Whole year.
No, the point about money, which of course is the kind of engine oil of any presidential election, I think they've got $200 million on cash that is pledged to the Biden-Harris campaign.
The only thing I'd say is, can you imagine the energy that would come into the Democratic Party if they actually took... I mean, Taylor Swift, we've discussed her on this podcast before. No, but she's very cleverly not endorsed anyone, partly because I guess, to your 18-year-old, do any of her followers really warm to either of the candidates? No. So why would she get involved? If it was a young dynamic woman, I wonder if she wouldn't just go there. And once Taylor Swift said it, oh my God, I think your funding issues and your voting issues are probably solved.
Yes, and and that is a big issue. I think it's transformatory. Yeah. And just think of the oxygen it would steal from Donald Trump at a stroke if you don't have him being the centre of attention, but someone new, someone shiny, and someone with a new message that can articulate it without stumbling and fumbling and looking like they're very, very old indeed.
So imagine this for one moment. We are not at the place where we are putting money on Biden being replaced. But if he was, just imagine how that then affects the Trump campaign. Trump suddenly becomes the oldest candidate, the most rambling candidate, the unfittest candidate. I mean, these are not metrics by which...
The criminal record candidate.
I was going to say, these aren't sort of political metrics, but they're metrics that matter to Donald Trump. Because so far, he has managed to look like the young Boy Scout against...
the tyro.
Yeah, exactly, against Joe Biden. And without Joe Biden, with somebody younger, more energetic, more focused, that becomes a headache for him. And as we said, he is going into his convention. Now, the convention is really the coronation, I guess, for the candidate. The whole thing will be about Donald Trump. And all the speeches and all the kind of guests lead up to this moment, usually towards the end of the week, sort of Wednesday night, Thursday, where you get the delegate count and you get the coronation of the candidate. In this case, Donald Trump gets the nomination for Republican candidate. Now, he wants to play a few tricks this week. We're going to be there in Milwaukee, in Wisconsin.
Well, you're going to be there. I'm not.
Well, Gabriel and Rory and we, and you, I think, are going to go.
I don't know where I'll be.
Okay. Well, we're imagining. I mean, it's not impossible that there could be a brokered convention in Chicago for the Dems in August, which will be the most electrifying moment of the summer imaginable.
Yeah,
right?
it could be extraordinary. But I mean, just to go back to the convention and
It's
a coronation without Westminster Abbey, without special oil, without a kind of thing being erected around you so you get changed into your special robes. There is a lot of ticker tape. There are a lot of balloons falling from the sky.
Oh, there are a lot of red, white and blue balloons.
A lot of red, white and blue
if it's Donald
balloons.
Trump, there's a lot of gold. I mean, in 2016, that stage could not have been golder, right? And it was the first place in 2016. I remember listening to Rudy Giuliani get on stage, Trump's lawyer, and he got the crowd chanting. This was against Hillary Clinton. Lock her up.
Yeah.
And it was the first place I had heard that as a kind of visceral animal slogan. Beating, stamping, clapping, booing, lock her up. It was frightening, actually. It was really frightening. The irony, of course, that 8 years later, we're still waiting the sentencing of Donald Trump, who may or may not be locked up, but has been convicted now of 34 charges.
And what you described of conventions is absolutely true, that these are kind of ritualistic, anointing, confirmation, coronation, crown placed on head, you are the candidate, good luck in November, Godspeed, we're all behind you. Chicago, there could be a very different story unfolding, where the uncertainty could lead to what's called a brokered convention or an open convention, where you don't know what the hell is going on. I mean, in back rooms, they're trying to fix deals about who the support should go to, should Biden fall, and who would bet with the farm on him not falling right now.
We should explain the kind of the mechanics of what happens at the convention, because it's all about the delegates,
the
right?
pledged delegates.
So exactly, just talk us through it.
So each state will go through a primary, and we've covered the primaries and we've covered the caucuses, and you get a number of delegates. So, for example, Nikki Haley, who tried to take on Donald Trump, has still got a pile of delegates that are hers that she could bestow to Donald Trump. Biden has got nearly all the delegates. If he pulls out of the race, those delegates, and they add up to a certain number, and that after which point you are the nominee, those delegates are suddenly no longer pledged to somebody. And then they become open, and then you've got to decide among your caucus, each state, what you're going to do with those delegates. And there will be a caucus meeting of, the California or the Wisconsin or wherever it happens to be, Nebraska, and you will decide what you're going to do with them. And there will be incredible lobbying, there'll be backroom deals done, there'll be arm twisting, there'll be the full panoply of ugly politics that is irresistible. And it's not how US politics has run for decades now. It happened before. We haven't seen it in years.
I think it was the 1940s, wasn't it? The last time we had a brokered convention. But I would say that going back again to 2016, there were ugly moments, or potentially ugly moments, at the Democrat convention when Bernie Sanders, or at least many of his supporters, felt that he had been denied the chance to be the nominee. There was a lot of dirty material that came out about what the DNC had or hadn't done to promote Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And so there was a moment at which Bernie Sanders had to stand up at that convention and say, I endorse Hillary Clinton. We cannot let this get in the way of fighting Donald Trump. Come with me, to his supporters, because, there was a lot of kind of unease about that whole thing. And similarly, at the convention of Donald Trump in 2016, the last person to hold out was Ted Cruz. Do you remember that night, the Wednesday night with Ted Cruz, where he had a hissy fit and he wouldn't quite endorse Donald Trump the night before Donald Trump became the nominee?
And now some would say Ted Cruz is so far up Donald Trump's backside that all you can see are his feet waggling around.
Well, I wouldn't say that. You might.
I saw a clip the other day where she wants to ban plastic straws. Those paper straws suck. We don't want paper straws in America.
What do we want? Plastic straws. When do we want them?
Now.
Forevermore. Yes. That was Marco Rubio, who may or may not, by this time next week, be the vice president for the Republican Party on the ticket with Donald Trump. He's a Florida man. He's a senator.
God-fearing, always quoting passages of the Bible.
Yes, and the son of Cuban immigrants. And, I mean, it is funny, isn't it? I think we know that environmentally, America is behind the UK, right? I mean, like, to spell out the really obvious. But it is extraordinary to hear, you know, is it wokery?
Yeah, wokery.
Please don't use paper straws. They suck. Or other, maybe they don't.
Well, the whole point about a straw is...
You do suck.
That it should suck. That's the only thing I know about a straw. What do straws do? You suck.
Yes. So that's the kind of row that is emerging now.
These are the big issues.
Yeah, exactly.
Do straws suck? Maybe we should title this episode, Do Straws Suck?
Yeah. I mean, here we've got Suella Braverman talking about the pride flag and the mutilation of children. And in America, they're talking about plastic straws. It's all part of the same thing, which is mention the culture war at any possible moment you can.
And stoke it wherever possible. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.
The Newsagents USA.